And I feel like in this, for me, learning from you and a lot of these different things, me and my wife, cause like we're a team on this. So I'm telling her like, hey, I know these are my struggles. Here are the things that have happened in my life. Like, let's talk about them a little bit so that you understand them. Cause that's key too. I think where she's not just this obstacle in my way of this emotional journey that I'm on. She is actually there helping me along it. Like, okay, she sees that my emotions are starting to take control, and she's like, okay, I know what's going on before you flip out, or like before you turn into this Hulk. Like, I think you're kind of doing this, and helping me identify it a little bit ahead of time. So she's kind of my partner on that. But that's where me and her talk about these kind of things a lot. And me and her are trying to get to a point where like I can identify what my emotions are before they take control of me.
Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
Big Zach, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Great to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. This is awesome. I'm so glad we could do this. Yeah,
likewise, man. Thanks for, just how God works, man, how it all worked out there. That's awesome.
It is amazing. It was amazing. I known Anthony for about 2 years when we were in the old guard together. And so we're always talking, like, really, I got the idea of doing a podcast from him. He was the S4 and I was the XO for the HHC. So we had offices right next to each other. And every morning we'd sit there and drink coffee and just talk about leadership, talk about all these topics. And he said that he had this plan to start a podcast someday. And I'm like, man, that sounds great. That's a really awesome idea. So, when he left, we constantly keep talking back and forth, and he was giving me feedback and things on our podcast. And he was like, yeah, that emotional intelligence is a great topic. I'm like, yeah, it's an awesome topic. I'm like, have you ever heard of Noble Givens? And he's like, heard of him? I know him. I'm like, stars are aligning. I'm like, this is awesome. So I'm super excited we can do this.
Well, how did you come across my podcast?
So I listened to the Military Leader podcast, and it wasn't, but maybe like 2 or 3 months ago. And I heard you on there, and I'm like, what is emotional intelligence? Like, I had no idea. And that was like right when I started really trying to like really get involved in myself and like trying to study how I do things and understand like this big mess that's in my head. And it was like perfect timing to hear this podcast. As I was like, wow, this is really cool. Let me look this guy up. And you said you had your own podcast, and I was like, done. I'm in. Here we go. Let's start this thing up. And like we get confession, I get a lot of the things I talk about on my podcast from things that you've talked about on yours. Not completely stealing your ideas, but like.
No, that's great. I love it. That's awesome. What a blessing, man. I totally appreciate you sharing all that, Zach. It's just, it's amazing how God works, how it all works and comes together. And no, dude, I tell you, for me too, it's been a journey, and a lot of the stuff that we come up with, we've read somewhere, we got from our counselor, but it's personalized to our story. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it may be a concept or principle that I read in a book or got from a counselor, but it's like, okay, but it's been vetted through my own application and experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me your story, Zach. Just tell me your story. Tell me your background and stuff.
So I'm from Illinois originally, central part of Illinois. And then I transferred to Western. I went to Western Illinois University, where I went through ROTC. And there I met my buddy John and his wife. And they led me to Christ, me and my wife, to Christ. And it was amazing. We built this awesome relationship. And from there, really, my life kind of diverted from this plan that I thought I had for me to this plan that God had for me. And it led to me, and at the time I wasn't married. It was me and Alicia, we were just dating, but we got married very shortly after we became Christians. I commissioned into the armor branch in the Army. And, since then I've been to Fort Hood, I've been to Korea, I've been to Virginia in the Old Guard. And now I'm here in Fort Benning, and me and my wife now have 3 beautiful kids. I have a 4-year-old, about to be 5-year-old daughter. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and then now a about 18-month-old son.
That is awesome. What a blessing, man. That is so cool. And what's Alicia do? What's her background?
So she is also from small town in Illinois. We went to community college together. We went to university together. And then she's been a stay-at-home mom, taking care of the kids as I get dragged around the world with the Army. So she's amazing at that. And she has a degree from Western with an emphasis in education. So she's dabbled in some education areas wherever we've gone, and she's holding down the home while I'm away.
That's awesome. So tell me about your podcast.
Yeah. So like I said, Anthony kind of gave me at some point in my life this idea of doing this. And, I've had this just idea, I think since I was like in high school of, I just really like just sitting down, talking with people. And I always thought like, man, if we recorded that, I think people would actually enjoy listening to that, regardless of if it was anything good. Like, I just wanted to have more of just like a conversation based thing. But then, here right now, like we just have a lot of time, especially with the pandemic going on. Like I've had a lot of home time, and I actually started up another podcast with 2 of my other buddies. It's where we talk about like actors and movies and things like that. And as I was kind of going through that process with them, I was like, man, like this would be a lot of fun to do and kind of do this conversation topic, leadership type of discussion that we could do. And so, really it started off as like a therapy thing for me because for the longest time, like for me, it was really hard for me to really lay down on paper, like things that are going on in my mind. And like, it's really hard for me sometimes to listen to maybe a lecture and then really conceptualize it all and be able to like reference it back. I'm like, well, I would love to be able to just talk it out, because I can talk it out for hours with somebody. But then remembering what we'd actually discussed and, being able to give that to somebody else, like I just haven't been able to do. So I started journaling not too long ago, maybe about like 5 months ago. And I just write anything, all types of stuff, just my thoughts in this journal. And it really helps me map it out and lay it out. And then it helps me as a husband, it helps me as a father, it helps me as a Christian to really like understand where my emotions are at any given time. And I'll just doodle, like I'll do anything in this notebook, and I'm just filling it up. And I'm like, so I've used this podcast as also as a type of way to do that, to where if I've got something on my mind, I just want to share it with somebody and talk to somebody about it. And if anybody can take anything of it, maybe they can just resonate from it, and heck, maybe they can even learn from it. Like that would be great, because I wear multiple hats as a person, as a pretty young guy too. I'm a Christian, so I've got the Christian hat on. I've got my father hat on, I've got my husband hat on, and I'm a soldier too. So I have all these different types of perspectives that I feel like I can have something to talk about, and maybe somebody can resonate with that. And I just want somebody to see the raw side of it, because so many times in all of those areas, people like to paint just these pretty pictures of this is life. And, you're showing on social media that, all the good things and stuff. I'm like, I kind of want to show the hard stuff, the struggles, the things. So that's kind of how we got the name. We just want to be unfiltered. So Men Unfiltered. We just want to hop on here and just be real. Like, man, guess what? Today, me and my wife fought all day because I'm an idiot, and I did something really wrong, and I wasn't, really in tune with what my emotions were at that time. And I was lashing out or whatever. And then I can talk about what I did to maybe go through that and how me and my wife built off of that. And here are the wrong things I did, but maybe here are some of the right things that you can do. Can anybody really relate to that? I don't know. Hopefully they can. And I don't think you hear that very often. I don't think you see a lot of people being real about, hey, I struggle with being really selfish all the time, and I get really angry at my kids a lot. And, what am I doing to try to combat that? And like, it's one thing to identify it, and then it's another thing to actually go after it and try to do something about it. And I think it helps me personally, the podcast, but I just hope it helps somebody else too. So that's kind of the whole premise behind it.
Love it. That's awesome. And it's called Unfiltered?
Men Unfiltered.
Men Unfiltered. Okay, that's excellent. That's great. I think it's great, dude, what you're doing. I think it's awesome, Zach, that you're that kind of leader. I think it's definitely needed, dude, in this world. How many episodes in are you?
So we've got recorded about 5 or 6, but one's about to drop tomorrow at noon, and talks about dealing with anger. And we get really real about just the anger that we have in our lives about certain things and what we do to try to combat that.
That's awesome. That's great, man. I'm so proud of you, and I'm ecstatic, man, of what you're doing.
I wrote these questions down after I re-listened to the Military Leader podcast again with you on there, because you talked about so much stuff that really resonated with me as a military leader. So I've got some of these questions that may kind of piggyback off of your discussion on there. So hopefully they kind of communicate themselves. But so what steps, processes should someone take in order to become more self-aware?
Yeah, love it. Excellent question. So number one is just understanding that EQ is critical. That's number one, right? Because if you don't think, emotions and feelings or this world is even relevant, you're not going to take the time to invest. Like your faith. If you don't think, well, man, what's the big deal about faith or about eternity or, again, whatever your backgrounds are, it's fine. But for me, I'm a Christian and I love Jesus, and I want to, that area or aspect of my life is very important. And because for me, I understand the importance of eternity, I want to invest a lot of time in that. Well, same kind of in a similar vein, in a similar thought, really truly understanding why and how our emotional health and intelligence is so critical, personally and professionally. That's huge. That's number one. The next, so under that point, our emotional grid impacts every single decision we make. So even for my hardcore analytical folks and logical folks and system-minded, process-minded thinkers, even it's all physiologically, right? Even physiologically, our decision-making process goes through our emotional part of our brain before it gets to our logical part of our brain. So physiologically, it hits our emotional brain first before we start to analytically process something. And so it impacts every decision. Next point under, so this is all kind of one, so that's 1A. 1B is no one makes it out of our childhood unscathed.
Sure.
Nobody does. And so even if you're in the minority, and my wife and I were in the minority of people in the country, maybe the globe, that had a quote unquote normal childhood. Now, even with that, so again, even us, so we even had, you know, some emotional injuries and stuff like that. So even with normal people like us, and I feel like we're the minority, right? Because I feel like most people have very dysfunctional families, and you know, I sometimes say our family put the fun in dysfunction, right? So though we were normal, we still had our
right.
healthy dose of dysfunction. And so it's not, so the question isn't, do I have emotional injuries? It's how many emotional injuries do I have? Number one, how many of those emotional injuries am I aware of? And how are these childhood emotional injuries impacting me and affecting me as an adult?
Yeah.
So that's the real deal there. Number two is, I've got a whole list of EQ exercises and action steps that I would recommend, again, to answer your question on how to start developing your self-awareness. Number one under two, so 2A would be to journal, right? Just like you started doing. It's another level of intentional reflection. So reflection would really even be before that, would be just reflection time, right? But the next level of reflection is journaling, because now you're really being intentional with that that skill, if you will. Number two is, you know, just to, again, these are all suggestions, but set reminders for yourself. Your alarm, your phone, you know, as you know, with you know, your Google Calendar, however you schedule stuff, randomly to buzz or whatever, random times throughout the day, just to take 10 seconds, 20 seconds. How am I feeling right now? Just a quick situation. You know, remember, you know, when you know, before you cross the LD, or shortly after you cross the LD, that's line of departure for civilians that maybe listen to this podcast or watch the YouTube video. When you begin your military mission, they call it crossing the line of departure, and you're in kind of combat mode once you cross the LD. And shortly after you cross the LD, you're supposed to conduct SEALs: stop, look, listen, and smell. Well, you're doing the equivalent with your emotions, right? Throughout the day, boom, just a quick SEALs with your emotions. Okay, how am I doing? How am I feeling? Where's my headspace at from an emotional standpoint? Because again, more often than not, there's an emotion that is driving us that we're not even aware of. And so that's another idea there to help with our self-awareness. Number three is content, right? So consuming content. Begin reading books, reading articles, listen to podcasts, watching YouTube videos, TED Talks about EQ, about emotional intelligence, you know, to begin increasing your awareness, to begin building that mental and emotional file, you know, for this language, the language of EQ. And I've talked about that in a number of our podcasts. In fact, yeah, in a couple of the recent ones, I talk about the process of learning, and just beginning that process of learning, which is building your grammar up, which is that first phase of learning is grammar phase. So just, what are the words of emotional intelligence? Like because again, most people don't even know what emotional intelligence is. So from our perspective, my perspective, emotional intelligence is the awareness of your own emotions and the ability to effectively and productively process those emotions, and the awareness of others' feelings and emotions, and the ability to take all of that data of emotions and feelings, our own and others, process that to make the most effective decisions in our lives, in every area of our life, right? So that's how I define kind of emotional intelligence. And there's 4 aspects to emotional intelligence, stuff like that. But anyway, I won't jump into that. But just a quick generic, kind of basic definition there. Okay, another idea. Schedule time to ask. So throughout the day, and again, you can set an alarm. You can do it at night. Dinner time where you got here's another. This is free tacos right here. The easiest way to begin a new habit is to attach it to a habit that you already have. So one habit that most families have, or most people have, is they eat dinner. So why not make this part of? And I've got some links for you, Zach, that I can share with you as well about some of the stuff, about how we make our dinner time very intentional. But this is something that you can add in that I call it dinner ops, right? I put ops after everything because my military background. But schedule time to ask your spouse, your children, your homies, how they're feeling. Again, beginning to make the language of emotional intelligence and emotional health an SOP, a standard operating procedure in your home as part of your personal SOP of how you run your company, your family, your business, that kind of thing. Another thing is, so here's another point, and I learned this one in counseling. 2 times a day, at the beginning of the day and maybe towards the end of the day, pick a random emotion. And you can do this with your family or your friends if you're single, some of your tight homies. Just random emotion. And you can go to Google. We've got it on our I think our website, eqforentrepreneurs.com. I think we've got an emotion kind of list of emotions written out. You can just Google emotion wheel in Google, and there's all kinds of different resources there, which I have had to do. Like that's where I started out, because I knew good, bad, and angry was about the only emotions that I knew when I started this journey. So literally, if you need help, like the cheat sheet, right? Do that, and literally, this is what we would do. I would literally close my eyes and kind of eeny, meeny, miny, moe, right? And I'd stick my finger on the map, so to speak, the emotional map. Oh, it's on fulfilled, right? That's kind of even a hard one. That's for me anyway. So two times a day, you do this exercise, and so now I landed on fulfilled, and I'm going to say the following. I'm going to say the most recent time I've felt fulfilled was when I went live yesterday on my Facebook page, and I shared 3 reasons of why I've still been held back in my business. So your most recent time when you felt fulfilled, and then I follow that with the first time I felt fulfilled was, and now you think of a time between birth and high school. So you want to try to get a time before, not quite college, but high school to birth, somewhere in that window. How early can you go back in a childhood memory? The first time I felt fulfilled was when I realized that I was pretty good at basketball as a kid. So now I was probably, maybe 6 or 7 years old. And that was just a good feeling, to feel good at something. It felt fulfilling to me. So boom, that's the exercise right there. And then it's your turn, right? So now you would go, right? And then, your buddy John would go, right? And we just kind of go around the circle, and we'd all do this. Now, the kind of the rule or the guideline is, I can't use you in my example of the emotion. So if I land on disappointed, well, okay, disappointed. The most recent time I was disappointed was when Zach said, so you can't use, like in a family scenario, you can't use your spouse as the example, right? Because now you get in a fight, and now it goes south very quickly, and that's not the point of the exercise. So you can't use, each other or the children or whatever in your conversation, in your examples as you do this. And the reason why it's important to go back to that early time is you're trying to build a mental and emotional file for that particular feeling, right? And honestly, it's funny that I even picked fulfilled out of the hat, because the first time we did this exercise as a family, I didn't even know what that felt like. Like, man, what does fulfilled even feel like? I don't even know. Like, I had no file for it. Right? I had no, because I had been a stuffer and avoider my whole life of my emotions. Fulfilled might as well have been a Chinese word, right?
Right.
Feng shui, right? I don't know what feng shui is, right? It's like it's the same kind of concept, right? I had no idea what fulfilled was. Okay, now 2 other things to help increase your self-awareness. Watch movies and pause periodically to see if you can identify how the actors are feeling. So do that next time you're watching the movie with your wife, or pause it throughout the movie and just, okay, man, what's this person feeling right now? And what are the actors around them feeling? You know what I mean? And then, this is money. And then watch it with no sound and see if you can identify how they're feeling, right? So the nonverbals, which is the aspect of emotional intelligence that falls under, is social awareness, right? Can you start to develop your social awareness? And sometimes by developing your social awareness, it will help develop your self-awareness. And then the last point there is video record yourself interacting with your coworkers. And just, obviously get permission from them. Hey guys, I got this exercise from a podcast I'm listening to, right? This podcaster recommended that I do this. This is just for my own personal development and really professional development. You guys mind if I just set up a camera in the corner here and just let run for, 20, 30 minutes, just so I can help grow my emotional intelligence, right? Most people are like, yeah, dude, no sweat, whatever. And so, and so then you do the same thing. So then you record yourself just throughout the day, just, put on the camera, just, recording yourself in your office, whatever, interacting with folks. And then, just like the previous point, watch yourself, watch the dynamics. How are you feeling at any given moment? How are others feeling? And then watch it with no audio. And what are your nonverbals communicating? What are others' nonverbals communicating? So those are the things, the steps that I would say to help begin somebody's self-awareness journey.
Wow. That's great. I think, man, I got so many notes on this now. I would like to see that at home too. Just like, hey,
100%.
the camera up real quick, and then let's watch this later today. I don't think we'll like maybe 50% of what we see, but
that's right.
Like, I feel like that's good. Sometimes that the tough conversations and the tough things that we see about ourselves, and then we find out we're like, man, I didn't even realize I was acting that certain way, and look how that affected the relationship with my spouse or with my kids or with my coworkers. So that's great. I think those are some great first steps that I think someone could take. Just identifying, one, what is EQ and why it's important, and what you can kind of do with it in different steps. So those are great. And I can't wait to try some of those out.
Zach, and here's another spin on those last 2 points really quickly that I think would be even more game changer, even more poignant and more strategic, is video a conflict moment. I call it an intense family fellowship with your wife, right? Video that interaction. Hey, babe. Okay, we're about ready to get into a throwdown match, right? Not for real, but we're about ready to start an argument. Do you mind if I just video us having this conversation to see, because I want to go back and review it and see how I do, right? Yeah. That specifically conflict, right? Because that's a whole nother. That conflict is one of those areas of life, and I just did a live on this on my Facebook page. It'll be coming out on episode 2, in an episode also, that some different areas of our lives that expose our EQ, and conflict is one of those times that exposes our emotional health and our emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that's great. I've I've said that before, maybe not with those intentions. Like, maybe we should just record this so we can remember what we were just saying right now. No, I think that's great. And I really can't wait to try some of these that you said.
Well, okay. So Zach, since you're a learner, so here's something else. This is also free tacos here. Something else that you said that really, so one of the things I did for the first, I don't know, maybe 5 years of our marriage is I documented every IFF that we had, every intense family fellowship that we had. I documented it and then would spend time going through all the lessons learned of, okay, how did we get here? What happened? What did I say? What did she say? What were the triggers?
That's
you know what I mean? So that's a whole nother thing that you can do. And then, dude, you want to talk about podcast content, right? I mean, that's podcast content for days, man.
For the past week and just see, let's go through the list here, hun, and go through that. No, I mean, I internalize, do that. I'm like, hold on. Like, if we're in this argument, I got to figure out how we got here, what we're doing here, and how we're getting out of here, and then what we're learning from it. Let's, like an AAR, this is an after action report, so no, that's great. And I think if you come about that in a loving way, it won't come off so negative maybe to your spouse. Like I'm documenting everything we're doing right now, but no, that's great. That's great. And I'm super curious as we have these conversations throughout to kind of pick your brain on more, maybe more focused on that. I'm kind of keeping it a little broad right now, but yeah. So from the moment I listened to you for the first time, I immediately was like, dude, this guy is energetic. He is passionate about this. And I try to consider myself pretty passionate about the things that I do. If I'm not passionate about it, it may not be worth doing right now. But where did you start this journey? Is there something that triggered in your life that you're like, oh my gosh, this has got to happen? And I know it's kind of a broad question, but I don't know if you have maybe a personal story of I've got to figure things out here. And what is this emotional intelligence?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's how many stories do you want for this? So here's what happened. So married for 20, so now we're 24 years, 24 years we've been married. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Okay. So a couple points here. So there's the whole concept of love languages, right? The 5 love languages. If you haven't read that book, right? I highly recommend that to the listeners and stuff. Excellent book. Well, my wife is quality time. And the dialect that they say in this book of quality time that she is communication. And typically we are the most sensitive in the area of our love language. That's free tacos right there. And that is massive. So if you pick what your top 1 or 2 love languages are, I guarantee you there's a 99.9% chance that you are hypersensitive in those 2 areas.
Sure.
Okay, so my wife, again, communication. Well, so again, 4 or 5 years ago, there was a phase in our relationship where I yelled at her 3 different times over the course of a month. It was a pretty condensed time period. So again, number 1, I yelled at her, but number 2, it's in her love language, which is the most sensitive. So each time it was soul crushing to her, crushed her soul, right? If either one of us forgets to give each other a gift on our birthday, we don't really care because neither one of us is gifts, right? That's not, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot, but it's not our big thing. But if I yell at her, it's don't pass go, don't collect $200.
Game over. Yeah.
Right. And so she said, dude, 3 things. Number 1, don't ever yell at me again. Number 2, you've never yelled at me before. 3, that means something's up. What's going on, dude? What's up? And I couldn't I couldn't refute the evidence, right? I couldn't refute the facts. I didn't ever yell at her before. I had just done it 3 times in a period of a month. What was the deal? And so, and what happened was, so now, which leads to my second story of how I was raised in my family. So again, my generation, right? I'm one generation older than you, or 2 generations. I don't know exactly how that works out, but and then I was raised by obviously an older generation as well, right? So baby boomers in that generation, how often did baby boomers ever talk about feelings and emotions, right? It's the World War II generation. Like, dude, that's for sissies. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't care how you feel. We're going through the Depression right now, or I don't care how you feel. We're going through World War II right now, or, Korea, Vietnam, right? So they never, feelings and emotions, was not part of their vocabulary. At least in my family, it was not. And so, this is not a knock on my folks. I love my folks, that kind of thing. It's just, this is how generational curses happen, this right here. And so we were raised in a house where my mom's a 4'10" little Hispanic lady. I call her the Energizer Bunny or the Tasmanian Angel. And she's the bee's knees, right? Amazing mom. My dad, amazing dude as well. But what happened is, in our family, the way we handle conflict is we yelled and screamed at each other. Like, legit yelled and screamed at each other. My Hispanic family, the ladies are very strong ladies and stuff. And it was a yelling and screaming match. And after we get done yelling and screaming some pretty good poison on each other, 10, 20, 30 minutes later, an hour later, we'd walk back in the kitchen and act like nothing happened. Hey, so what's for dinner? Or, hey, how'd the Cubs do? Or, hey, what's the weather today? And totally pretend like nothing happened. And so what that did was that trained me literally from childhood, to stuff my emotions. I've got all this intensity going on inside me, but we're not talking about the elephant in the room or the 15 elephants in the room. Well, maybe, and and this right here caused a cascade of issues in my life. This one thing of not discussing our feelings and emotions in our childhood, in our home, it was fine for me to stuff and avoid as a kid because it was a cute, fuzzy, furry little monkey, but then multiply stuffing and avoiding over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. And now that cute, furry little monkey is an 800-pound gorilla, right? It's King Kong. Or I'll say, like, sometimes I'll say, and what happened ultimately is I went King Kong on Kathy, or I went Hulk. I turned into Hulk on Kathy, and I was no longer in control of my emotions anymore, because emotional injury on top of emotional injury on top of emotional injury on top of emotional injury, pretty soon those little fractures in our emotions, all these little fractures of injuries, those fractures start to add up, and pretty soon the whole foundation erodes. And now all of us, like, again, it was all fun and games when I could stuff and avoid it. I could control it. I could handle my emotions. And then all of a sudden I start, emotionally swinging at my wife, right, by yelling at her. And I was like, oh, snap. Okay, there's clearly something going on inside of me that I no longer am in control of. Because what happened was, too, this was scary. What happened was, when Hulk came out, when King Kong came out, dude, literally, I'm telling you, and there's an actual term for this. It's called being emotionally hijacked. When you are emotionally hijacked, when King Kong comes out, when Hulk comes out, dude, I was literally no longer in control.
Yeah.
Dude, like I was. And so those episodes when I would go Hulk and I would go King Kong, dude, it was scary for me, because it was like, literally, it was like the Hulk example where he turns back into Bruce Banner and is like, sees all this destruction and wreckage. Like, man, what happened here? And Kathy's like, dude, are you serious? Do you not know what you just got done doing? You just got done tearing up this house emotionally because you just went, you went nuts on, right? So anyway, that's my story. That's why we started this journey.
It's weird you say that, because I feel like I can relate to a lot of that. I kind of grew up in a home where that was common. And then you just flip the switch and you're just like, all right, we're all good. Like, because we're not going to talk about it, and I don't think that really came out until I started having kids. And then just these emotions, and man, God bless my wife for being someone who's not shy about saying you're jacked up. So, I mean, without that, I mean, I would just be doing that because I thought that was normal. And I'm learning this as you're saying this too. So I'm kind of like reflecting on this. So because that would happen, like, and we call it going red. When my 4-year-old goes red, it's just, we're like, she's like glossed over and just on this rampage, and there's nothing, you got to just kind of let her be for a second, and I've been that way. And, I talk about it a little bit on this anger episode that we're going to have, but, like, yeah, when I'm angry and I'm just going into this, like, there's nothing that you could say to me or do that is going to keep me, like, my emotions are in control right now. Like, this is just happening. And then as soon as I just like come off of this high type of thing right now, it's just, you're just like, well, what was that? Like, what just happened? Like, and I'm like, hey, are we all good? Like, sorry, sorry I did that, like, well, like, wait a minute. And she's standing there like, do you not know what you just did? And, sorry, you can probably hear the sirens going on in the background.
Oh, no worries. No worries.
But yeah, I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Like, it's fine. I said I was sorry. And, I thought we were good on this. And, I shouldn't have done that. I'll try to control that next time. And I was like, dude, I wasn't in control at all. I can't, like, what is going on? And then you just telling that story helps me think, like, yes, there's these things that have led up to this point. It's not like, sometimes I think a lot of people just say, like, well, that's just who I am. And that's, there's no reason behind it. That's just me. But man, you can tackle these things that are in front of you or behind you, or like that are causing this. And you just becoming aware of it is only putting you a little bit ahead of that now. And I feel like in this, for me, learning from you and a lot of these different things, me and my wife, because like we're a team on this. So I'm telling her, like, hey, I know these are my struggles. Here are the things that have happened in my life. Like, let's talk about them a little bit so that you understand them. Because that's key too, I think, where she's not just this obstacle in my way of this emotional journey that I'm on, but she is actually there helping me along it. Like, okay, she sees that my emotions are starting to take control. And she's like, okay, I know what's going on before you flip out. Or like before you turn into this Hulk, like, I think you're kind of doing this, and helping me identify it a little bit ahead of time. So she's kind of my partner on that. But that's where me and her talk about these kind of things a lot. And me and her are trying to get to a point where, like, I can identify what my emotions are before they take control of me. Boom. And that's really where we've really stepped up, I think, in our relationship, and then just me personally. But man, like, I think so many people don't understand that. And 100%. It's just, it makes so much sense when you explain it. You're like, oh, that's common sense. Of course, that's what's going on. But yeah, I think everyone's kind of got a personal story on that a little bit.
100%. And again, back to the whole point of nobody leaves their childhood unscathed. So it's again, it's not if you've got emotional issues or emotional baggage. It's are you aware of it, right? Yeah. And are you going to spend the time to work through it? Here's another scary moment that really convicted me to work on all this stuff is our daughter, this is probably a couple years now. So her personality style is, 4 main personality styles. Well, there's all kinds of different ways that you can break this down. I use a book called Personality Plus, where they talk about the sanguine, the choleric, the melancholy, and the phlegmatic. And my daughter is a mix of the melancholy and the choleric. And my wife is choleric melancholy. I'm sanguine choleric. Excuse me. So a lot of intense personalities. Choleric is the kind of the strong, personality in there of the 4, and the sanguine too. Both of those are kind of big personalities, or can be. And so my daughter is a melancholy choleric, and all 4 personalities have their strengths and weaknesses. So there's not like, oh, well, this is a better mix than this. No, we all have our own strengths and weaknesses in our wiring. And so she's melancholy, and melancholies and sanguines, those 2 personalities are the most emotional. And the sanguine, which me, the outgoing extrovert, their emotional wavelength looks like an EKG monitor, right? We can be up and down in a matter of seconds, right? My mom can watch Bambi laugh 1 second and 2 seconds later she's bawling, and then she's laughing again, and then she's bawling, like literally in the same 5 minutes, right? Sure. And so, but a melancholy, it's a different emotional wavelength. Their emotional wavelength looks like a sine curve. So when they're up, but when they're down, they can be down for days, they can be down for weeks, they can be down for months. And so, and melancholies are they're very critical. They're very critical of themselves and very critical of others. That's kind of, you know, again, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Well, my daughter is, you know, she was in the preteen phase. So she started to get this, you know, the hormone cocktail started to hit, right? And what happened was, man, we were sitting in the living room and on our sofa, and out of the blue, man, and it was late at night. Okay, this is another thing. It was late at night, and out of the blue, I don't know, we were talking about, dude, it was like maybe it was raining or I don't know what it was, right? Just and something like, man, you know, I can still hear the rain outside, or, you know, I said something like that, and our daughter lost it. Like, I'm talking, went Hulk mode, like yelling, screaming, waterworks, like completely. And dude, what happened was, as soon as she did that, guess what happened to me? As in my emotional healthy phase, you know, in my emotionally unhealthy space that I was in, I also went to Hulk mode. And dude, it is not safe when two people, it's not safe for one person to go Hulk mode. It's exponentially less safe when two people go Hulk mode.
Yeah.
And I hit Hulk mode, and it scared me so much I had to leave the room, because I was literally scared of what I was going to do. And I told Kathy afterwards, you know, it took me a little while to calm down, cool down. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what just happened to me? Like I totally got emotionally hijacked, right? As soon as she went over to Hulk King Kong mode, I went too. And here's what I realized was, that's exactly what would happen when I was a kid with my younger sister.
Ooh,
when
okay.
my younger sister got emotional, it immediately triggered me, and I got emotional as well. And just making that connection was incredibly healing and therapeutic. And now that I was aware of my trigger, just being aware of it, the next time it happened, rather than going to a 10, I went to an 8. And the next time she flipped out, rather than going to an 8, I went to a 6. And the next time she flipped out, right? So just being aware of it, really, and realizing, like you said too, the you know, one of the things in the emotional intelligence world is the origin story. Once you discover the origin story of that trigger or that emotion, now you can start working through that and healing from that. But that was also another scary moment for me. That's like, dude, I've got to get emotionally healthy, because I can't go Hulk on my daughter and my wife. Like, are you kidding me? That's not even an option, right? I have to get healthier.
Yeah, for sure. That's really convicting for me, because I feel like I'm still kind of young even though I have 3 kids and my oldest is 4, but I still feel like, you know, I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to get to that point to where I can just walk out of the room and identify before things go too far, you know, before I say the wrong thing and before I've emotionally just damaged my kids, you know, because I'm not just thinking about myself in this whole topic either. Like, I'm thinking about my wife who's doing it with me because I want to support her and she wants to support me, but also, like, I'm raising these kids, and, you know, maybe I don't want them to have quote unquote emotional scars from their childhood that I have. Like, I want them to be emotionally set. And I know, I love how you said the love languages too, because I listened to a lot of stuff on that, and identifying your kids' love languages at an early age. And then, of course, just drowning them in that love language, but also exposing them to all the other love languages so that when they're older and they're seeking that love language from a partner, that they can actually receive more love languages because they've been exposed to all of them. You're kind of matchmaking for your kids a little bit ahead of time, like, well, if it's physical touch, like my oldest daughter, it's physical touch. When I come home from work, all she wants to do is just cling on to me, hold on to me. And before I'd be like, let me get out of the way. Like, let me come inside and just relax for a little bit. But then I became aware of that. And I'm like, no, just come here. Like, I'll stand here for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. Like, come here, let me swarm you in that. And also let me give you some words of affirmation. Like, let me give you these other languages that you can now accept so that when you're older, you're not just stuck on maybe one, So I think.
Love it. Love it. That's exactly right. And also to start educating your children on their own love language and also yours and your spouse's love languages. So now, so that way it doesn't develop into selfishness. Like, hey dad, like, hey, I'm physical touch, like meet my love language. Like, hey babe, hun, this is about the family. So, let's all try to be intentional at speaking each other's love languages. Even if I'm not physical touch, and maybe your quality time and I'm not, okay, well that's love, right? That's love. It's a decision. It's not just a feeling. It's more than that. It's a decision. So can I grow in my maturity and love you in the way that you receive love, not in the way that I like to receive love.
Yeah.
Right. So that's another great stuff, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something that a lot of people would like to hear, and I know I've heard you talk about it, and I know this one's a pretty loaded question, but having like a personal and family mission statement, like that's something that I've really been thinking about in the last year or so. Like as I'm about to maybe take company command, troop command, like I want to have a mission statement that I'm solid on. I also want my family to have a mission statement or, a commander's intent, some intent, key tasks, end state. Like I want to have this thing, laid out so that my kids have something we can always reference back to it. Like it's the standard. I can put it up on the wall and be like, are we meeting this today? Like, is this what we're doing? Is this what we're, driving towards? Do you have one like that? And if you do, how did you develop that? Do you have steps for that, or did it just kind of come naturally?
So, and I've got a bunch of links that will kind of help. I've done a few different live videos on your personal mission statement and that kind of thing, and developing it and stuff. So I'm very passionate about this. In fact, I've got 2 tattoos about this. One tattoo says, "Why are you here?" And the other tattoo says, "Who are you?" And that's part of that personal mission statement. And so one thing is to do a core value audit, right? Are your core values really your core values? So, and what I like to do is with folks is that I may be working with or coaching, whatever, is do a time and financial audit on yourself. So in other words, show me your calendar and show me your bank statements, and I'll tell you what your actual core values are, right? Because what you spend your time and your money on is what your real core values are. You may say, "Oh man, I love my family." Okay, well, where's your family at in your calendar and your bank statement, right? Yeah. Oh, but I really love them, but I'm staying at work until 2200, because the boss doesn't leave until 2200, so I have to stick around till 20. Okay, so then what's the core value there? What are you showing by your actions, right? What you do speaks so loudly I can't hear what you say, right? Yeah. I'm a cheesy quotes guy. So that's one thing that I would do, right? Is a core value audit. And then so now you start like John Maxwell says the leader's number one responsibility is to identify reality, right? So where, in the infantry speak, I would say, where are you at on the map? So so again, your core value audit, what are my actual core values? Not what I want my core values to be, what are my actual core values? And then the next step would be Now do your core value wish list. So based on your balance sheet and your calendar, your actual core values are A, B, and C, but I actually desire them to be D, E, and F. So once you come up with your desired list of core values, then your next step would be to come up with some action steps to begin implementing those core values. And, okay, so one core value is family. Okay, well then what are some action steps that you can do to live out family being a core value in your life, right, as an example? And the reason why core values are so important is because your mission statement is going to come from or emanate from your core values. That your mission statement should reflect your core values. And then, you actually hit it before I did. In the military, and I use this example a lot. In the military, how many missions did I do? Now, I was not a combat guy. So, I was not a combat. I never went to combat because I got in the military and out of the military before there were any conflicts. There was no conflicts going on when I was in the military. So I was, but with that being said, even in my experience, my non-combat experience, how many missions did I go on in training without a mission statement from the commander, without a commander's intent? Right. Zero.
Right.
You would never, ever, ever cross the LD without at least a commander's intent.
Yeah.
Right. Because then what are you doing? Like, you're going for a walk then. You're just, like, let's skip or whatever, right? What I have found is 99.9% of people cross the LD, the line of departure of their life, every single day with no mission statement, no commander's intent.
Wow.
That's one of my elevator questions. Right. And that's, again, why I got the tattoo. I call them my airplane tattoos, because what I'll do is I'll hold a bag so that my arm is facing out, and I walk down the alley, and I just pray ahead of time, hey, God, let the right people see these. And I see people like, man, who am I? Why am I here? Right. It really, really reflect on their purpose and stuff. And so, because that's critical, man. Mark Twain, a cheesy Mark Twain quote, one of my favorite quotes is, the two greatest days in a man's life, the day he was born and the day he figures out why. Right? Why are you born? What are you doing here on this big ball of mud? And so, but now that being said, developing your mission statement is a process. So it's not something that, oh man, Hark, Shazam, here's my mission statement. It's going to be a live document. It's going to be a live thing, you know what I mean, that you be working on. Another thing is, begin jotting down thoughts of what potential mission statements could be. And I'll tell you mine here in a second. Have a note on your phone, on your smartphone, or a journal dedicated specifically to your mission statement. That way, boom, when you're bebopping, you're on your road march, or you're reflecting, you're at night, you're praying, whatever. Oh man, okay, I want to add this aspect to my mission statement. I want to add this aspect to my mission statement, right? And so, but for me, my mission statement it's fivefold. To positively impact millions of people for the kingdom of God, to positively influence the influencers, to raise the next generation to be patriotic world changers, to love the Lord their God with all their heart, mind, soul, spirit, strength, and body, and to help hungry people identify and pursue their purpose in life. That's my fivefold mission statement. And that mission statement reflects, my core values. And so, because what I get from a lot of people when I'll ask them, that's my elevator question. I'm that guy that will, be in the elevator with you, and I'll be like, hey man, what's up? Hey, just real quick, what's your purpose in life? Right? Rather than look up or look down, like let's get awkward, right? We're all awkward anyway, right? In the elevator, everyone's awkward, like, oh, we're close. Da-da. Hey, dude, what's your purpose in life? And dude, 99% of people, it's a cow looking at a cell phone, right? Oh, I have no idea. Yeah. And if they do say something, it's helping people. Okay, that's great, but like, what does that mean? Yeah. Like, everybody wants to help. Like, dude, you gotta, like, you know what I'm saying? To more effectively bring the best out of you, you got to understand what your mission is, what your purpose is. Now, I got this from one of my other buddies, a buddy of mine named Malika. One thing that he had a really wise insight, and I think he's probably your age. He's a young guy. He said, dude, a lot of people can find their mission statement or discover their purpose in life through serving. So just go serve. Go serve someone, somewhere, something, find a cause, something that you can start serving in. And in that process, you may be able to discover your mission statement, your purpose as well. But I've got, let's see, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got 5 links that I'll share with you too, so you can, use them or whatever, share them or whatever you want to do that all relate to like family legacy, right? Your mission statement, I feel like is a huge catalyst in impacting your family legacy, right? You will hit every target that you don't set. You know what I'm saying? I have no idea what my goal is. Well, you're going to hit every goal that you don't set. So by setting that plumb line of a mission statement, that increases the chances of you impacting your family legacy. So anyway, that's what I would say there for mission statement.
Awesome. That's great. That's good. I think that's something me and Alicia kind of do already without actually putting it down on paper. But I think it'd be good for us to actually put it down on paper, for a lot of people to actually just get it down, because you're that much closer to actually meeting those goals or those things. And I guess that can apply to a lot of things, but get it down on paper and then process work it.
Let me hit this too. So what also is very closely related to your mission statement is your family identity. And I've heard this quote from amazing parenting system called parentingmadepractical.com. It's what the parentingmadepractical.com. And Joey and Carla Link is the couple who started this thing, and it has been life-changing as a parent. And they've got content from literally birth to 18 years old. Powerful content. And one of the most powerful quotes I've ever heard about this is, peer pressure is as strong as family identity is weak.
Wow.
Peer pressure is as strong as family identity is weak. And again, I got that from parentingmadepractical.com. And it's, because one of the things that I have been thinking about since I was a new dad is, man, how do I get my kid ready for, this crazy culture that we're living in, this society that's like, oh, whatever you feel like is good. And like, hey, it's all about the feels. And here's the thing too about, so it's funny, talking about emotional intelligence and emotions and feelings. The point of growing your emotional health is not so you are controlled by your emotions. It's so that you're not controlled by your emotions, right? And to help them inform you, right? Because God gave emotions and feelings to all of us, so we can't do anything like they're part. Like, get rid of your blood. Well, you can't. Like, that's part of you, right?
Right.
So anyway, in this culture where it's like, man, it's crazy, dude, this culture we live in, but there's no moral plumb line, right? It's whatever the latest offendable thing is. Oh, I'm offended at this, or I'm offended at that. And right, it's our value. It's like the core values of our country is like whatever the latest flavor is. Like, oh, it's vanilla today, and next week it's strawberry, and then it's chocolate, and then it's Neapolitan or whatever. And so if you don't have that plumb line for your family, so mission statement, I feel like it's very closely tied together with identity, your family identity, right? And personal identity. And for me, this is just for me. So obviously, again, whatever, our listeners are, your listeners are, can be whatever faith, is what it is. But for me as a Christian, I want my personal identity to be in Christ. I want our family identity to also be in Christ, and also to follow this plumb line of our mission statement, because that's going to be a big thing in terms of your family identity. And one of the things that you do with your family identity is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but still related, is what does your family stand for? What does your family represent?
Sure.
So for us, the Gibbons family represents Christ, character, principles, perseverance, leadership, faith, business, serving, learning. We've got this whole laundry list of things, and we taught this to our kid when she was 3 years old to get it in her psyche, just to memorize. She doesn't, at 3 or 4, she had no idea what character means or honor or, all this kind of stuff. But when we get it programmed into her psyche now at 4 and 5 years old, and that can be also part of your dinner ops, right? Hey guys, what's our family identity? Boom. And you run like the Ranger Creed. And that's the power. Once you have that in your being, now when she's, now that she's, preteen, about to be a teenager, man, it can go sideways pretty quick as a teenager with all that hormone cocktail going on and stuff. But now she's known her identity for 10 years now, a decade of being programmed with her identity. So when she's in a compromising situation, somebody's like, hey, let's go smoke a doobie, or let's go, get plastered or whatever. It won't even be a decision for her, because it's already, no, that's, hey, you do your thing. That's totally cool. I'm not going to judge you. Be safe. Love you. But that's not how I roll. That's just not how I roll. That's not my family identity. That's not who I am. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You helped her identify her identity before somebody else gave her one, before
culture and society does it.
Because they will. They're going to do that. Yeah. That's huge. I think it's funny because we're trying to do all this. Me and my wife are like really trying to be intentional with ourselves and our emotions and how we do lead our families and things like that. And we want to do something with our kids. We learned, we have a couple friends that have done something where they can count it on their hands. It was just 5 key things. And then it was a thing that toddlers can learn, yeah, they don't understand it, but they can at least start recognizing that. I mean, my 4-year-old remembers things that I don't want her to remember sometimes, and she'll go off and just spout it. And, one of the greatest things I've ever heard her say just off the cuff is asking people oh, do you love Jesus? Because I love Jesus. And I'm like, that is I didn't even teach you to say that, but I'm so proud of you for saying it. I'm like, but that's because we expose her to that. And so what we're going to expose her to is what she's going to carry with her. We need to make sure and be intentional that we're exposing her to the right things and we're teaching her these right things. So that's why we want to straighten ourselves up here and get ourselves on a mission statement, identify our core values and here's what we are and here's who our identity is in. Because it's so easy to say, I think for me, for the longest time, I knew that my identity is supposed to be in Christ, and I'll say my identity is supposed to be in Christ. But then I'm living something with my identity in my work or in something completely different. And then sometimes you crash really hard and realize, oh, that's not where my identity was at. It was in something completely different. Bring it back to this and simplify things a little bit sometimes. But yeah, no, that's great.
Love it. That's awesome, bro.
I'll leave you with one last question, is culture, building a healthy culture. I'm curious, as not only, a Christian and a husband and a father, but as a leader in an organization, maybe not specific to military, but just any organization. How do you start with that healthy culture? How do you build that from the get-go?
I did a presentation with one of my classmates who's a brigade commander, and to his brigade leadership, all his basically captains, first sergeants and above, about 150 senior leaders on this topic. Because here's the I would say the number one principle is culture eats vision for breakfast. Culture eats vision for breakfast. I don't care what your vision is, whatever your culture is of your organization, of your unit, of your company, of your organization, it will trump whatever vision you've got, unless you do some things to be intentional to change your culture. You can't show up on day one as new company commander. Okay, guys, here's my vision. Da da da. And you let out your commander's intent. Your vision. At your change of command, and then expect the culture to change. Like, no, dude, the culture is going to eat your vision for breakfast.
Wow.
So that's something to realize. Like, culture is massive. And a lot of times, especially in the military, you inherit a culture, right?
Yeah.
You don't come in and like, okay, sweet, I'm going to start from ground zero. No, understand that any organization that you take over, right, or that you get promoted to, or get in charge, promoted into, there's already an existing culture, and it's good or it's bad, or it's good and it's great, or it's bad or it's worse, or it's toxic, right? And so that's number one, is culture trumps vision. The next one is to do a self-assessment. How do you feel about your organization? Now, all this stuff applies to your family also.
Sure.
Right? Every family has its own culture too. Every family. Right? So if I were to walk into your house right now, and assuming you guys are all together, right, and the whole family was together, I walk in your house, I would be able to feel the vibe, right? There's a vibe, right? The vibe is an extension of the culture of your family. So, and we all have it. You as a human, man, you can't not have culture. You get two people together and a culture starts to form. So this stuff applies to business, to leadership, to military, to family. So after you realize okay, culture trumps vision, the next thing is to do a self-assessment. How do you feel personally about this unit that you're a part of, whether it's your family, your company, battalion, whatever? How do you feel about it? And use one word to describe it. Excited, happy, quality, solid, growth, leadership, toxic, right? Whatever, positive, negative, whatever that is. And then also rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. How do you feel? Again, how do you feel about that, your unit? Scale 1 to 10, 10 being, oh man, it's incredible, it's off the charts. 1 being, oh my goodness, man, I want to bail, or this is super toxic. Next question is, why do you feel that way? Why did you assess your unit in that regard? 1C is how from the self-assessment piece, the third sub-point to that is, how effective do you feel you are, or your organization is in the role that you're in? How effective do you feel? Oh man, 10, dude, I'm getting mad results. I'm effective. I've got lots of traction. Or no, man, I'm getting nowhere. I'm spinning my wheels. I'm not effective at all. And again, why do you feel that way? Okay, the next big topic here, number 2, is, so after self-assessment being number 1, and that first point really will just be like a big overarching principle. So number 2 would be identify what what are your existing core values are as a leader, as an influencer in the culture that you're in. What are the existing core values that currently make up your existing culture? So not desired core values. What are your existing core values? You may want them to be, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but they're currently LMNOP, right? So what is your existing core values? And then how do you feel about your culture of your organization? What is your fundamental belief about your culture, right? So your culture assessment is one thing, but now what do you believe about that culture? That's different. Your culture and your belief about the culture, 2 different things. So what's your belief about your culture? And the way to kind of assess your beliefs, or what stories are you telling yourself about your culture, will help you identify what your beliefs are about your cultures. What stories are you telling yourself? Are you self-aware enough, humble and teachable enough to objectively look at your culture?
Sure.
Because in the military and a lot of organizations, many people are defensive about being truly objective about how you are as a leader. In fact, there's an amazing book that a retired sergeant major recommended to me. His name is Scott, incredible dude. EOD Sergeant Major. I was at the unit for a number of years, worked for POTUS for a number of years in the Obama administration. And he recommended this book to me. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. Leadership and Self-Deception. And there's a bunch of stats, but one of the things is, and I'm not going to say the number because I don't remember it, but the bottom line is the majority of leaders think that they're in the top 5%. Well, if you can't all be in the top 5%, right? So, and it was at like, they did like 10,000 executives. They polled like 10,000 executives, and like, it was something like 80% to 90% of executives felt like they were in the top 5%. I mean, talk about not being self-aware, right? Emotional, right? And again, emotional intelligence. So are you self-aware enough, humble enough, teachable enough to look at your culture objectively? Okay, point number 3, identify what your desired core values are. So this is very similar to our self-assessment thing we did earlier on, right? So what's your actual, where are you at on the map, on the core value map? Because core values are part of the foundation of developing your culture. So, identify where you're at on the core value map, your culture, and then what's your desired core value list. So you've got the 2, actual and desired. And then when you develop it, so then you look at what's the delta between these 2. Right now it's a toxic culture. I want it to be a growth-oriented culture. What's the delta? And now put an action plan in for each one of these points, right? So I don't want toxic. I want growth. What's the delta? What are 1 or 2 action steps that you can do to take it from toxic to growth-oriented, right? So what's that? So what's an action plan and even a timeline for those action steps? Now, here's the thing. What I also don't recommend is, and this is something this applies personally too, for me, if you said, hey, Noble, what are the things you have to work on? Well, I've got probably 100 things I have to work on. And what I would do early on in my self-development days, my early growth days, I would try to work on all 100 at once.
Yeah.
And not change anything, right? And fail at all of them. So pick one at a time. Tackle one at a time. Get base hits. One of my real good buddies is a big baller, CEO, executive in the oil business. And one of the things he says is, dude, go for base hits. Just get on base. Get on base. Go for base hits, right? So what are one action step? Okay, let's work on the growth order. Okay, we got that down. Now we've worked on that for 3 to 6 months. Okay, now what's the next core value we can work on? What action steps can we take to work on the next core value? Okay, next one. The next, this is point number, 5 is action plan and timeline. Number 6 is a concept called collisions. Okay, that concept of collisions comes from a book called The Culture Code. It is phenomenal, The Culture Code. And the CEO of Zappos, big giant zillion-dollar company, the CEO designed his building, his big giant facility. I think they're in Vegas. Designed it specifically. This was one of his KPIs, key performance indicators or metrics, is the number of conversations, the number of casual conversations that he could create between coworkers. And he called that collisions. Every time you and I bump into each other in the hallway or at the water cooler, right? The water cooler talk, he would create as many spaces as he possibly could in his facility, and not just spaces like physical spaces, but also schedule-wise. He would create schedule-wise as much opportunity for his coworker, his staff, his company to interact with each other on a casual basis as possible, or like think golf course talk, right? How much business happens on the golf course, right? So all those casual conversations he calls basically collisions. So his goal was to have, I'm making the number up, but just because I don't remember exactly the number, but just give or take, give me plus or minus here. His goal was to create 100,000 collisions in his company each year, right? And that helped solidify the culture, because now you got folks interacting with each other, so the frequency of interaction and conversation with each other. Okay, that's number 6. Number 7, culture carriers. What are culture carriers? Leaders are culture carriers. You can increase culture through training, and you can increase culture through stories and testimonies of people that are culture carriers in your organization. So if you had to pick, so this is money, if you had to pick 1 or 2 people in your organization that would be the best reflection of your ideal culture, who would it be? Right? So it'd be Sergeant Jones and Specialist Stuffy, right? Okay, great. So now in your company command time, boom, when you're addressing the company, I'd get those 2 guys up and share, hey, Sergeant Jones, I want you to give us a little NCOPD, little OPD right now for the whole company. Give us 5 points, man, of what makes you a great leader, right? Hey, Specialist Snuffy, I want you to share 3 points on, what do you think makes a great company, right? And let them share to their peers, right? So it's not just coming from you because, well, of course you're going to say this stuff. You're the company commander. Well, what else are you going to say, right? But when it comes from their peers, whole nother level of value, right? It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to develop leaders. Yeah. And so if you can be intentional with those culture carriers through leaders, through training, and through testimonies, that's another thing. Number 8, language. The language that you use reflects the culture of your organization. So if I could spend 5 minutes with a PFC in your company, if I could spend 3 minutes with a guard duty guy, whoever's on CQ duty, if I could spend, 3 minutes talking to the platoon sergeant, and I take a random, spattering of folks in your organization, spend a couple minutes with them, and I listen to their language, I hear them talk, that's going to tell me what your actual culture is of your organization. So what language it reflects your culture, and how can you be intentional at the language that you want for the culture that you want. And the way you do that, the way you help change the language and ultimately the culture of an organization, so this applies to your vision as well. So to change the language and vision to make it into a culture is, I call it IFD, intensity, frequency, and duration. What's the intensity that you talk about culture or in language? What's the frequency that you share your vision? What's the duration that you share your vision? Do you just share it the first month that you're on the job? Or every time you address your company and your staff and your leaders, you're saying your vision? Every time. That should be the first thing that you say. Anytime you do anything, boom, hey guys, hey, first platoon, what's the company vision? Hey, third platoon, hey, Sergeant Jones, squad leader, hey, what's the company vision? Right? What's the company mission? Right? So boom, every time, intensity, frequency, and duration. Number 9, the other way that you instill culture and help change the culture of an organization is through individual counseling. Now, individual counseling, it's got to be done safely, appropriately, accurately, objectively, addressing behavior, not the person, not making it personal, affirming and empowering. You got to make sure all those dynamics, because most people I found don't even know how to counsel right. A lot of times in my days in the military, just a finger drill. Okay, here's the bullet points, sign your counseling statement, we're done. It takes 30 seconds and right. But there's no actual growth or change that comes from that. So if you can teach people how to do it right, now you can start doing one-on-one and building that culture on a grassroots level from person to person, from leader to protege. So those are the things I would say.
That's awesome. That is gold. I'm like, I can't write fast enough here. I'm going to have to just go back and listen to this. This is great. Really, like, you've got me motivated by all means right now. Like, I'm ready to be a battalion commander, I feel like, to just go and lead this. So this is great. And I'm just thinking in my mind, like, how can I apply this to my family? Like, I can't wait to start doing this. I can't wait to apply this to when I'm a commander. I'm like, I love it. And, I've heard a lot of these things, and I can't wait. I just can't wait to grow with you on this, because this is awesome. So, you really covered more than I could even ask for in these questions right now. And, this is awesome. This is great.
Well, Zach, here's another great leadership lesson that is an amazing reflection of you. The quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. So if you feel like the answers were good, that's because the questions brought it out, right? So the quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. So you had amazing questions, bro, that brought out hopefully some good actionable content for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's amazing what you're doing, and how you're definitely affecting people, because you've affected me already. So, and I've only been learning this for the last couple months now. So I think a lot of other people can really do it, because I think it's an answer to a lot of people's questions and a lot of people's failures and issues. Like, emotional intelligence is behind it in some form or another. And identifying that really brings some clarity to people's lives, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And let me just say a few kind of closing big principles that have really been kind of overarching things for this whole emotional health and emotional intelligence journey. Number one, financial freedom without emotional freedom is not freedom.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would, this is a whole nother conversation, but I share in a number of our podcasts, but I mean, I could probably do a series on this, and probably will at some point, how even my spiritual health was 100% limited by my emotional health.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, dude, and that's a whole nother conversation. Okay. So that's number two is hurting people hurt people and are easily hurt by people, and emotionally healthy people help heal people emotionally. And then number three, we are passionate about helping leaders and influencers and entrepreneurs navigate the emotional journey of running their lives, their families, their businesses, by helping them get more emotionally healthy and more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you, man, for letting me be a part of this. I appreciate you. God bless you. And I look forward to, again, being a part of your journey.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care.